to the Solheim Cup. And KP, for the first time since 2017, the United States, by their lonesome, have that Solheim Cup. It was a 15.5 to 12.5 victory for Stacey Lewis and her squad. They get the job done on home soil.
Yeah, and it wasn't, you look at, if you didn't watch and you just look at the scoreboard, the leaderboard, whatever it's called, you'd be like, oh, U.S. nice, kind of wins handily. They did not win handily. It got really dicey late. And that's a great thing. I mean, people are tweeting about this, but that's a great thing about these team events is it always, even if it's not close, even if the eventual scoreboard is not really that close, it always feels like, well, one shot goes this way and then that match goes that way. Like it always feels nerve-wracking. Always. Like I think the only team event I've ever watched that didn't feel nerve-wracking was that the New York President's Cup. What year was that? 2017?
I think 17.
Was that when it was like 20 to 10 or something like that?
It was so bad. I was on the radio call. We were pulling for the President's Cup International guys to win a match on Saturday afternoon to keep the thing relevant.
Exactly.
That's how bad it was.
Exactly. The U.S. almost ended it on Saturday afternoon. And but other than that, like if it's remotely close, it feels like, it could get dicey. And I thought the U.S. had some players that, I mean, this was crazy. Nelly Corda's never won a Solheim Cup. Mm-hmm. She's 1-3. So they have a bunch of young players that had not been in the position of like, hey, let's go win this thing. And I thought it was cool that they did it. Lauren Coughlin was great. Lily Vu, the last shot that she hit into 18 was sick to win the Solheim Cup. I mean, it was awesome. It was an amazing shot. So it was super fun to watch. I loved it. It was great. And I think the U.S. team is really interesting because they're very young and I think they could be good for a long time.
By Solheim Cup standards, Mark, 15.5, 12.5 is an absolute blowout. This is only the second time since 2013 in which this has been decided by more than 2 points. So this has been an incredibly close, entertaining, and competitive international competition that we have gotten, and this lived up to it again this year.
Okay, I'm embarrassed to admit that this is the first Solheim Cup that I've honestly sat down to watch a whole bunch. Now, maybe it's because my eldest daughter is now more into golf and we're paying attention to this kind of stuff at the ladies level. But I just think the whole thing was great. I thought the golf course, RTJ, the setup was awesome. There was just enough rough to get you into trouble and just enough firmness for the ball to roll. By the same account, there were lots of birdies made. And I thought both captains, they did nice jobs. Look, Stacey Lewis is legendary in how her mind works. She always has been. And she proved that by her captaincy and how she stacked the team and how she set them out. Now they split up groups for alternate shot and for four balls and such. The only thing that was fascinating to me as it pertains to match play, because you kind of get players that are just like match play wizards, aficionados. They just play the format of the game well. Like you think of a Sergio or an Ian Poulter or Lee Westwood. I mean, these are all heroes, but they're ones popping to mind. And Leona Maguire is one of those. And I was struck that Suzanne Pedersen would have her on the bench for a number of games, which was odd. And then in the end, she did come through for a point. But to what you guys were saying, I mean, it looked like a blowout early. And then all of a sudden, I look at the leaderboard and I'm like, wow, this thing's nip and tuck. Mm-hmm. Even though the US were only a 1.5 away from securing the cup. And it was sort of on the knife edge for a long, long time. It could have gone either way. And in the end, yeah, Kyle, that shot that Lilia hit was tremendous. I would even go further than that to say to put the ball in play off the tee like she did, because that fairway edges you toward the right-hand side because of the bunker down the left. And it's so easy just to peel one off to the right. And then that green, the way it sits, you're coming in from a weird angle. And to hit the tee shot where she did, and then to basically take speed off an approach shot, because under pressure, you want to go faster, right? And she was able to gear down and feather this thing in there, land it short, skip it up there to a few feet. That was clutch. And I was like, wow, man, I got to watch this stuff more often.
Well, even the putt on the hole before, Mark, on 17. I can't remember how long it was. I looked up and saw it, and it looked 20 feet. I don't know. It was pretty far, 15 feet maybe. I thought that was impressive. The thing that struck me, Rick, and it's always true of these team events, whether it's President's Cup, Ryder Cup, Solheim Cup, whatever you want to, Walker Cup, every single shot, because of the way that they're structured, in the same way that I think 72 holes is a perfect individual stroke play number of holes, I think 28 points in team events is awesome. Or I guess President's Cup is 30 or anything around there. It's just it keeps everything really close, and it makes every single shot feel consequential. Like if it's Friday afternoon on the PGA Tour and somebody misses a fairway on the third hole, you're not like, oh man, that's you don't think anything. You're just like, oh, I missed fairway on the third hole. In the Solheim Cup or the Ryder Cup or the President's Cup, you're like, oh my God, like every shot you can almost just like feel the weight of it, because on Sunday you might need a half point, which the US did to win the event. And so I love that aspect and that truth about these team events. I think it makes them really, really interesting to follow from start to finish.
I'm nitpicking here, Rick, and maybe it's a recency bias, but you talk about half points. I came into the room and I'm watching Maya Stark, who's on the backside of 18 green. Then the next thing I turn around, she's got like 15 feet back up the hill for par to keep the thing alive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, the last thing you want for anybody is to be the person that three-putted last for your team not to win. And you speak about clutch putts made. I mean, she buried that thing right in the heart.
It was sick.
It really was cool.
I think they just showed it on Golf Channel. No, not yet, but they're getting close to showing it on the Golf Channel right now. KP, I want to bounce this back to you real quick, because what we have seen, while it feels very close late, is that the last couple of these team events often get decided. I don't want to say decided, but often the first day means so much. So on Friday in the first session, US wins 3-1. They do the same in the afternoon session, so they are up 6-2. After that, 2-2 on Saturday morning, 2-2 on Saturday afternoon, and the Europeans win 6.5 to 5.5 on Sunday. Kind of a similar story in Rome for the Ryder Cup. The US team split Sunday singles. They split the last the Saturday sessions. It was just that both of them both losing squads got off to really slow starts. And while we sit here and think, okay, it's going to come down to Sunday singles, it's like having that juice out of the gate is so critical to start putting flags on the board early.
Yeah, and I think a couple of things about this. The first thing is that when you're evenly matched, like these teams usually are, it's very difficult to have a lot of variance in singles, right? Because there's just more golf shots, and so because of that, you gravitate toward the median, which for a lot of these teams is like 6.6 or 6.5, 5.5 or whatever. And so I think what it means, Rick, is it makes either Friday or Saturday and the strategy behind pairings and the way you attack another team or the golf course monument. I mean, that's why you hear it preached from the European side, at least for the Ryder Cup. I know Justin Ray was involved on the American side for the Solheim Cup. I don't know much about the European side on the Solheim Cup, but you hear these things like, you're like, oh, the analytics boys or the data, and it's like, no, the tiny edges you can get on Thursday, on the first 2 days, Friday, Saturday, in those alternate shot or best whatever, is those actually really matter come Sunday, because if you gain that 1 or 2 point edge, it makes it just so tough for teams that are evenly matched to separate on a Sunday.
Well, if I may just build on that real fast, Rick, that's why people talk about the nerves of playing in this stuff, because look, you're representing your country and that's where it ends. And it's a point or no points or half a point on the line. And from Thursday morning at every single one of these, you see these players look like cats on hot tin roofs. I mean, they're like, you can see the nerves in their faces, because they know just because of the brevity of match play, and because of the fact that you just miss a few putts or you hit one bad shot, that could be it, because you don't have the luxury of playing 72 holes and making a mistake or two and then just lurking around the place. There's this instantaneous nature about match play, which is so cool, and it makes every shot count so much. And that's why from the very first tee shot on the very first morning, it's meaningful. And that adds to me to the emotionality of a sport that can be quite binary at times,
2026, we're headed to the Netherlands, which is going to be sick. It'll be the first time that the Netherlands has ever hosted a Solheim or a Ryder Cup. So we are going to make a little bit of history in a few years.